The mating grounds always smelled like honey and lies. Wren Corliss knew that smell better than anyone. 4 years now. 4 autumns of standing at the edge of the same lantern-lit clearing in the same gray dress, watching the same thing happen to everyone but her. She sat where she always sat. The far table. The one half swallowed by the shadow of the old oak where the light never quite reached and nobody quite looked. From here she could see all of it, the paper lanterns swaying between the branches like small trapped moons, the tables heavy with spiced cakes, the young wolves of Hollowmere dressed in their finest wearing hope-like perfume, everyone glowing, everyone waiting to be chosen, except her. Love comes to those who wait. Her grandmother used to whisper, stroking Wren's hair in the dark. Gran Isolde. Dead 3 winters now, and still the voice came soft and certain. Love comes to those who wait, little bird. Wren pressed her cup of watered wine against her lip and thought not for the first time that waiting was just a prettier word for being forgotten, because she was 23 and unmated, and the smallest wolf anyone in Hollowmere had ever seen. They didn't say runt to her face anymore. They'd grown out of that. Now they just looked away, a flick of the eyes, a tightening of the mouth, that small polite flinch people give a thing that makes them uncomfortable, which was worse somehow. Cruelty at least meant you existed. This was something else. This was being a ghost at your own life. You shouldn't sit back here alone. She looked up. Oswin, the pack's old healer, gray and stooped with kind eyes that had watched too many people down. Better view from here, she said. Bright, too bright. They both knew it was a lie. He patted her shoulder anyway, the way you pat something you can't fix, and shuffled back toward the light. On the platform, old Alpha Bran was beginning the ceremony. She could have recited it in her sleep. Tonight, under the harvest moon, we honor our most sacred tradition. The words rolled out over the crowd, warm and hollow, and one by one the names were called. One by one the unmated females stepped forward, and one by one strong young alphas crossed the grass to claim them. That electric snap in the air each time, the sound of 2 souls recognizing each other, the crowd cheering, lanterns trembling, somebody's mother crying happy tears into her sleeve. Wren counted. She always counted. It was the only way to survive it. 17 pairs, 18, because if she counted, she didn't have to feel. Wren Corliss. Her name landed in the clearing like a stone dropped in still water. The chatter died. Heads turned, slow, curious, already flinching in advance of the embarrassment to come. She felt every eye find her in the shadows, and she thought very calmly, I could just not stand up. Except her legs were already moving. She climbed the 3 worn steps to the platform, hands clasped so they wouldn't shake. She kept her gaze down because she knew exactly what she'd see if she looked up. Pity from the elders, discomfort from the rest, that awful gentle patience of people watching a thing fail on schedule. Bran's voice softened. Wren Corliss, daughter of the late Aldous, and Marin Corliss, presents herself to be chosen. Silence. She counted her own heartbeat. 1, 2, 5, 10. No alpha moved. She'd known. She'd known it walking up the steps, known it the way you know winter's coming from a change in the wind. But knowing a thing doesn't blunt it. Somewhere in the crowd a child laughed at something unrelated, and the sound cut through the quiet like a blade, and Wren felt her face go hot and her eyes go hotter, and she thought, don't. Not here. Not in front of all of them. Do not cry. Wren, do not. Perhaps, Bran began, and the sympathy in his voice was the worst thing she'd ever heard. We might. I'll take her. The voice came from the tree line, deep, rough as gravel dragged over stone. Every head in the clearing whipped toward it, and a shape came out of the dark between the trees. A man so large the shadows seemed to peel off him as he moved. He stood a full head taller than any wolf there, shoulders wide enough to block the lantern light behind him so that for a moment he was just a silhouette, an absence in the shape of a mountain. Dark hair to his collar, a face all hard angles and old scars, one of them splitting his eyebrow clean in 2. His eyes found her, held her, and Wren forgot entirely how to breathe. The crowd parted around him like water around a stone. And you are? Bran demanded, drawing himself up. The stranger climbed onto the platform. He moved wrong for something so big, too quiet, too smooth, like violence wearing the shape of a man and keeping it politely folded for now. When he spoke, his voice carried to the last row without effort. Torvald Vane. They call me Torin, Alpha of Blackthorn. Blackthorn. The name went through the crowd like a cold draft. Wren heard the whispers spark and spread the pack from the Black Hills, the one that doesn't come to council, the Alpha who, and then the stranger's last line landed and buried all of it. And I'm claiming this female as my mate. The clearing came apart. Chaos. Voices climbing over voices. Somewhere a woman gasped and somewhere a man swore, and an advisor, sharp-suited, was sliding forward, already saying something about protocol and discussion privately. I'm sure we can reach, and Torin didn't so much as glance at him. He was looking at her. "You don't even know me," Wren said, small, barely hers. "I know enough." "That's not an answer." Something flickered across his scarred face. Not a smile. Something in the same country as one. Bran stepped between them, old bones squared. "Alpha Vane, the ceremony has protocols. You cannot simply walk out of the trees and claim, the ceremony allows any unmated alpha to choose any unmated female." Torin's voice was calm with steel underneath it. "I've chosen, unless your traditions are only for decoration." And the trap of it was clear even to Wren. Deny him and admit the whole ceremony was theater. Accept him and hand the runt to a stranger from a pack that ate children in the stories mothers told. All eyes swung to her, which was new. Nobody had looked at her, really looked, in years, and now the whole of Hollowmere was waiting on her mouth to open. She thought of next autumn, this same table, this same dress, the child's laugh in the quiet. She thought of Granny Solda. "Love comes to those who wait, little bird," and she thought with a clarity that frightened her, "I am so tired of waiting." "What are you offering?" she said. The advisor made a strangled sound. Bran's eyebrows climbed. Torin's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did, a small door opening a crack. "A mate bond," he said. "A place in my pack. Protection." "Why me? You could have anyone, stronger, prettier." "I could." He didn't soften it. "But I'm choosing you." It wasn't an answer, and it was the truest thing anyone had said to her in years. Bran leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her. "Child, you don't have to do this. We'll find another way." "Another way to what?" she whispered back, and she heard the bitterness leak out before she could stop it. "Sit here again next year, and the year after, watch everyone I grew up with raise their pups while I—" She swallowed it. "At least this way I belong somewhere." The old Alpha's face crumpled, and she was instantly sorry because none of it was his fault. He'd been kind in his way, but kindness had never once changed a fact. She turned back to Torin. "I need one thing first," she said. "The truth. Why are you really doing this?" The clearing had gone silent again, everyone straining to hear. And Torin, this mountain of a man, this creature of scars, leaned down close enough that his next words were for her alone. "Because I need a mate before the autumn council. In 2 months I turn 30. By our law, an alpha without a mate loses his claim to lead." His breath was warm at her ear. "And you need someone to choose you. We both walk away with what we came for. That's the truth. It isn't pretty, but it's true. Not romance, not even kindness. Honesty. And God help her, that mattered more than any pretty lie ever had." "One more question," she breathed. "Are you going to hurt me?" Something cracked in him then, just for a second. "No," he said, and his voice had gone quiet in a different way. "I'm going to protect you, even from my own pack if I have to." A pause. "Especially from them." Wren took a breath that shook the whole way down. Madness. This was madness pure and total. But so was sitting alone in her grandmother's cottage for the rest of her life, waiting for a wolf who was never coming. "Then I accept," she said. The clearing erupted for the second time that night. Torin ignored all of it. He drew a ring from his pocket, a plain dark band etched with symbols she didn't know, and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses and warm, so warm against her cold fingers. "Wren Corliss," his voice cut through the noise. "I claim you as my mate before the moon and these witnesses. Do you accept this bond, the old words, the binding ones? Once spoken and accepted, the thing began. Not the instant lightning snap of true mates. Something slower. A chosen bond built on purpose, brick by brick. Gran Isolde used to say those could grow just as strong as fated ones given time and tending. Love grows where you tend it, little bird. Ren hoped she was right. She had never hoped so hard for anything. I accept this bond, she whispered. He slid the ring onto her finger. Too large. It hung loose. But the metal warmed against her skin like something alive, and when he lifted her hand and pressed his mouth to her knuckles, a gesture so gentle it made no sense on a man built like a war, her breath simply stopped. "Then it's done," he said. "You're mine now, and I'm yours." The bond sparked to life between them. Not overwhelming, not all-consuming, but real, a single thread strung suddenly between her chest and his, thin and growing less thin by the second. She felt it settle somewhere behind her ribs, warm and strange and terrifying, and she understood with sudden dizzy certainty that she had just handed her whole life to a man whose face she'd first seen 20 minutes ago. He turned to the crowd, her hand still in his. "We leave within the hour," he said. "Anyone with a problem can raise it with me now." No one moved. Whatever Blackthorn's reputation, the sheer fact of him, massive, scarred still as a drawn bowstring, was enough to keep even the bravest wolf's mouth shut, except one. A woman was pushing to the front of the crowd, sharp-featured, silver at the temples, her mouth folded into a line of pure disapproval. Ren didn't know her. She wasn't Hollowmere and she wasn't Blackthorn either, and Ren couldn't for the life of her work out what she was. Later. Ren filed it away. Later. "Go," Torrin said softer to Ren. He nodded toward the dark beyond the lanterns. "Pack what matters. I'll wait here." She stumbled down the steps on legs that barely held her. The crowd parted around her, some shocked, some pitying, some, she could see it plainly now, simply relieved. Relieved that the runt was finally someone else's problem. A hand caught her arm. "Ren," one of the girls she'd grown up with, eyes wide. "This is insane. You can't actually leave with him." Ren pulled free, and she surprised herself, surprised them both with how steady her voice came out. "You got your alpha," she said. "Let me have mine." Even if he was far from perfect, even if this was a bargain and not a fairy tale, even if she was terrified straight down to the bone. She turned, and she ran for her grandmother's cottage on the edge of the Packlands, her too-big ring catching the moonlight the whole way. The cottage was dark and cold the way it had been since Gran Isolde died. One room, a rocking chair by a dead hearth, herbs drying from the rafters, the narrow bed in the corner where Ren had slept every night of her 23 years. An hour to say goodbye to all of it. She lit the lamp with shaking hands and started throwing things into her travel pack without any order at all. Her 2 other dresses, wool stockings for winter, Gran's recipe book, its pages soft and yellow with use, the small carved wolf her father had made before he died, small enough to close her whole fist around. "What did you take when you were leaving forever, Ren?" She spun. Oswin stood in the doorway out of breath. He'd run after her from the ceremony. His healer's bag hung from his shoulder. "Oswin, I don't have time to—" "I know, I'm not here to stop you." He stepped inside and shut the door. "I'm here to help." Her eyes stung sudden and hot. "You think I've lost my mind." "I think you're brave." He crossed to her small shelf and began pulling things down with a healer's efficiency. A comb, a tin of salve, a folded packet of willow bark. And then he paused, his hand resting on the shelf's edge, and when he spoke his voice had changed. "Ren, your grandmother made me promise something, if this day ever came." Ren went still. "She never wanted you to know. She thought it would only make Hollowmere crueler." He turned to face her, and his old eyes were wet. "The Corliss line carries something. It's rare, so rare most packs don't believe it's real anymore. They called it the quiet sense." "The what?" "You feel what others feel. Their pain, their fear, the things under their words." He said it plainly, like a diagnosis. "And when you're grown into it, you can do more than feel it. You can ease it. Calm a panicked wolf with a touch. Draw the worst of a grief out like drawing poison from a wound." Ren's mouth had gone dry. "That's not I can't do anything. I'm the weakest wolf in 3 territories. Everyone knows you're small." Oswin's voice sharpened, kind and fierce at once. "Small isn't weak. They looked at your body and never once thought to look at your heart, and so they missed what was there the whole time." He pressed the salve into her hands, folded her fingers over it. "You aren't weak, Ren. You were never weak, you were misunderstood, your whole life, by everyone but her. And there it was. The thing Wren had swallowed for 23 years, named out loud at last by a dying woman's promise. She didn't cry. She was too stunned to cry. She thought of every wounded creature she'd ever knelt beside in this cottage, every trembling animal that had gone still under her hands. Every time her grandmother had watched her do it with a strange, soft look Wren had never understood. "Oh, oh, Gran, is that what you were seeing?" A fist hit the door, hard. "It's time." Torrin's voice, through the wood. Oswin gripped her shoulders. "Listen to me. You're walking into a pack that will test you, that will try to break you, and you're going to let them think you're exactly what Hollowmere thought you were." His grip tightened. "Right up until you show them what you actually are. Do you understand me?" She didn't. Not really. Not yet. But she nodded. "Write to me," he said, pulling her into a quick, hard embrace. "Let me know you're alive." "I will." She shouldered her pack, took one last look at the water stain on the ceiling shaped like a bird, the floorboard that creaked by the hearth, the window that never quite shut. "I wish you were here, Gran," she thought. "You'd know what to do. She'd tell you to trust yourself," Oswin's face said before she'd even spoken. She opened the door. Torrin took her pack from her shoulder and slung it over his own like it weighed nothing at all. The walk back through the packlands felt like a funeral march. Wolves lined the path, staring, whispering. Wren kept her chin up by pure force of will. She would not give them the pleasure of watching her fall apart. At the edge of Hollowmere territory, Bran was waiting. His old face was troubled. "Child, if you've changed your mind." "I haven't." He pressed a small pouch into her hands. "Coin. Not much, but enough to get you home, if you ever need it." The kindness nearly undid her. "Thank you, Alpha." And then from the crowd, the sharp-featured woman, again the one with silver at her temples, stepped just close enough for her voice to reach. "You have no idea," she said softly, and she was smiling, and the smile was all wrong, "what you've just walked into." She said it to Wren, but her eyes for one strange half-second went past Wren's shoulder to the black tree line where Blackthorn's territory lay, as if she were speaking to someone there, someone waiting. Then she melted back into the crowd and was gone. Wren stood there with her heart suddenly loud. "Who was that? She's not Blackthorn, she's not Hollowmere, so what is she doing at our ceremony, and why did she look at the trees like that?" "No. Stop. You're frightened, and everything looks like a threat when you're frightened. Stop it, Wren." But the cold stayed in her chest all the same. "Ready?" Torrin asked. "No," she said. "Not even a little." His mouth twitched. "Almost. Welcome to Blackthorn." At the tree line where the territory ended, he paused and turned to her. "Last chance," he said quietly. "If you're going to run now. Once we cross into neutral ground, you're committed." She looked back, at the ceremony grounds where she'd sat alone so many years, at the faces that had never truly seen her, at Oswin giving her one small, fierce nod. Then she looked up at the scarred stranger who had chosen her when no one else in the world would. "I'm not running," she said. Something moved behind his eyes. "Respect, maybe. Then stay close. Neutral ground isn't kind after dark." And he shifted. Wren's breath caught in her throat. His wolf was enormous, twice the size of any alpha she'd ever seen. Dark gray shot through with black shoulders, roped with muscle built for one thing and one thing only. He lowered himself slightly. An invitation. Her own wolf was too small to run beside him. She knew it. He knew it. Pride warred with reason and lost the way it always did. She climbed onto his back and fisted her hands in his fur. He stood and launched into the dark. They ran for hours. The oak groves of home gave way to the wild, neutral lands, and then to something older and blacker trees taller than any she'd known. Branches knitting out the moon, the very air growing heavy, charged ancient. Blackthorn territory. He slowed at last near a stream and shifted back. She looked away while he dressed cheeks warm and drank from the cold water until the fog of exhaustion thinned. "We rest an hour," he said, voice rough from the run. "Then we go on. We reach Blackthorn by dawn." She sat against a tree, pulling her cloak tight. He stood watch alert even at rest, like a blade that had forgotten how to be sheathed. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask. I might not answer." That woman, at the ceremony, silver hair, sharp face, she said I had no idea what I'd walked into, and she wasn't from either pack. Who was she? For a long moment he was quiet. Too quiet. "Describe her again," he said. She did, and she felt it through that new thin thread between them. Before his face gave anything away, she felt him go cold, a drop in temperature straight through the bond like a cloud crossing a sun. "You know her," Wren said slowly. "I don't," he said, which was true. She could feel that it was true. "But I know that look. That was someone doing a favor for someone else." He stared into the dark toward home. "The question is whose, and how she got there ahead of me and back ahead of me if she's who I think she is. Torin, what am I walking into?" He turned back to her, and for once he didn't dress it up. "My pack won't want you," he said. "You're an outsider and you're small, and they'll see both before they see anything else. They'll test you, push you, try to make you break or run." A pause. "And there's a council, 5 of them. Not all of them wanted me to lead. Some of them have been waiting a long time for me to make a mistake they could use. And I'm the mistake. You're the excuse." He said it flatly but not unkindly. Which is not the same thing. Excuses can be turned into weapons, if the wolf holding them is clever enough. His eyes moved over her, reassessing. "Are you clever, Wren Corliss?" She thought of Oswin's hands folding hers over the salve. "You aren't weak. You were misunderstood." She thought of the quiet sense sitting somewhere inside her unused, waiting a locked room she'd walked past her whole life without knowing the key was in her own pocket. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "Ask me in a week." And that of all things earned her the first real smile she'd seen on him. Just a flicker, gone almost before it came, but real. "Rest," he said. "You're going to need it." She closed her eyes. The bond hummed low and steady between them, and somewhere out in the dark the wild things called to each other, and Wren Corliss, the runt, the ghost. The girl who had waited 4 autumns to be seen, lay under strange trees in a stranger's territory, and felt against every scrap of sense she had left something that was almost like hope. "Careful what you wish for, little bird," said Granny Isolde's voice, because she'd wished so long to be chosen, to matter to someone, to belong. And now she belonged to the most dangerous alpha in 3 territories, carrying a gift she didn't know how to use, walking toward a pack that would hate her on sight. And somewhere behind her a woman with silver at her temples was smiling into the dark and speaking to someone Wren couldn't see. She should have been afraid. She was afraid. But under the fear, so quiet, she almost missed it. Something else had woken up, something that had been sleeping for 23 years, and it was listening. Dawn came gray and cold over Blackthorn. Wren saw the pack from the ridge before they reached it, a valley carved between 2 black peaks wrapped in mist that never fully lifted. Where Hollowmere had been meadows and gentle hills, this was all sharp stone and shadow. Houses built into hillsides, long houses breathing smoke. Training yards where even in the thin light of morning wolves already circled and struck at one another with a brutal, tireless patience. And everywhere as she and Torin walked down into the valley they turned to look. "Is that her?" "She's tiny." He actually did it. Wren kept her eyes forward and her chin up. These wolves were nothing like home. Harder, scarred. Every one of them looked as though they could kill her without changing their expression. But she remembered Oswin. Let them think you're exactly what Hollowmere thought. So she let them look. Torin's hand found the small of her back, that same gesture from the platform warm and steadying, and the bond pulsed once between them, a thread of comfort in a sea of cold stares. A woman waited on the steps of the great stone hall at the valley's heart. Tall, silver blonde hair in a severe braid, built like a blade and looking at Wren like something scraped off a boot. "So this is the famous mate," the woman said. Her voice could have frosted glass. "Torin, you could have at least chosen one who might survive a week here." "Brindis," warning in the single word. "Where's the council?" "Waiting, and not happy." Brindis's ice-pale eyes never left Wren. "You left to find a mate and came back with this." Wren felt the flush start up her neck, anger and shame braided together the old familiar rope. But she remembered, "Don't show fear," and she remembered the locked room inside her, and for the first time in her life she reached toward it instead of away. Just a little. Just enough. And she felt it, Brindis. Under the contempt, under the scorn. Something raw and old and surprising. Not hatred. Fear. Fear for her alpha. Fear that he'd made himself weak, made the whole pack weak by dragging home something soft in a world that ate soft things alive. She's not cruel, Ren thought, stunned. She's scared. She's scared for him. It changed everything and nothing. But it changed the way Ren lifted her head. "I have a name," she said, and her voice came out steadier than she felt. "It's Ren, and I'm stronger than I look." Brindis laughed, short, sharp, and not entirely unkind. "We'll see." She turned to Torin. "The council's invoking the right of assessment." Something dark crossed his face. "Of course they are." "What's the right of assessment?" Ren asked. Brindis answered before he could, and there was almost a flicker of warning in it, as if part of her wanted the girl to understand exactly what she was standing in. "When an alpha brings home an outside mate," she said, "the council can test whether she's worthy. Her strength, her mind, her worth to the pack. Most fail. And when they fail, the bond is dissolved and they're sent away." Her mouth curved. "So enjoy the morning, little wolf. It may be your only one here." The great hall doors stood open behind her. Torchlight. The murmur of waiting voices. 5 figures at a long dark table already turning to look. Ren felt Torin go tense beside her. Felt through the bond the war in him, the urge to fight this for her, and the knowledge that fighting it too hard would only prove she couldn't stand on her own. So she made the choice for him. She stepped forward first. "Then let's not keep them waiting," Ren said. And as she walked toward the doors, toward the 5 cold judges and whatever they'd throw at her, she caught at a single face at the far edge of the hall, half in shadow, watching her come with an expression that didn't match the others at all. Not contempt, not curiosity. Recognition. Sharp features. Silver at the temples. A small wrong smile. The woman from the ceremony. Here. Inside Blackthorn's own hall. Days of hard running from where Ren had last seen her. Which was impossible, which made no sense unless she'd taken a shorter road, unless she'd never been at that ceremony by accident at all, unless she'd gone there and back on purpose because someone had wanted eyes on the runt from the very first. She's here. She was at my ceremony in my territory, and now she's here ahead of me, waiting like she knew before I did that I'd be walking through this door. The woman met her eyes across the crowded hall, and mouthed one silent word. "Welcome." Then the council rose to their feet, and a gray-haired man scarred down. Half his face lifted his hand for silence, and the doors of the great hall swung shut behind Ren Corliss with a sound like a trap closing. Whatever she'd walked into, she was in it now. And somewhere behind her ribs, in a room that had been locked for 23 years, the light had just come on. The great hall of Blackthorn was built to make a person feel small. Ren understood that the moment the doors shut, the ceiling vanished up into smoke and shadow. Weapons lined the walls, old and notched and used, and at the far end the council table sat raised on a low stone dais so that the 5 who governed this pack would always be looking down. She walked the length of it alone, Torin a half step behind letting her lead, which was either trust or a test, and she couldn't yet tell the difference. The scarred man at the center of the table stood. Gray hair, half his face melted smooth by some old fire, but his eyes were clear and steady, and when he spoke his voice held the weight of a man who had led before he chose to follow. "I'm Halvard," he said, "first of this council." He studied her a moment. "You know why you're here. The right of assessment. 3 trials over the coming days. Combat, knowledge, endurance." He let it sit. "Pass all 3 and you're one of us. Fail even one, and the bond dissolves," Ren finished. "And I go home. Yes, I understand." Something moved in his good eye. Surprise, maybe, that the runt could speak in whole sentences, but it was the woman 2 seats down who leaned forward. Sharp features, calculating eyes, a stillness about her that made Ren's skin prickle before she'd said a word. "The first trial is combat," the woman said. "Tomorrow in the yard, you'll face one of our own, not to the death." A thin smile. "To submission, or unconsciousness, whichever comes first." "And you are?" Ren asked, because she needed the name. Because names were the first thing you learned about a thing you were going to have to survive. Marrow, the woman said. Celine Marrow. I sit on this council. The floor seemed to tilt very slightly under Wren's feet. She sits on the council. She was at my ceremony days of running from here, and she sits on this council, which means she left Blackthorn, went all that way to watch me be humiliated in a clearing she had no reason to be in, and came straight back. Which means she was never watching by accident. Wren kept her face perfectly still. She'd had 23 years of practice at keeping a face still while it broke behind the eyes. Then I'll see you tomorrow, Wren said. In the yard. And she felt it reaching gently toward the woman the way Oswin had shown her without ever showing her. She felt what came off Celine Marrow. Not hatred. Colder than that. Patience. The patience of someone watching a plan they'd already set in motion, waiting only for it to arrive where they'd always known it would. Wren pulled back before it burned her. She knows something I don't. She's not testing me. She's harvesting me. Torrin's hand touched the small of her back. Just once. A tether. Tomorrow then, he said to the council, and his voice made at the end of a sentence they hadn't finished. He turned Wren toward the doors before Celine could add anything else. But at the threshold Wren stopped. She couldn't help it. She looked back. Celine Marrow lifted 2 fingers off the table, a tiny gesture, almost nothing, a little wave. Welcome, the woman had mouthed in the crowd. Like she'd been waiting for me my whole life, Wren thought. Like I was late. They gave her a room in the pack house, high up a window facing the Black Peaks. Torrin brought her food himself, simple and warm, and stood in the doorway while she ate as if he wasn't quite sure what to do with her now that he had her. 4 hours, he said finally. That's how long we have to teach you enough not to die tomorrow. That's not very long. No. A pause. It's also more than you're going to need, because you're going to lose. She looked up from the bowl. That's a comforting thing to say to your mate the night before a fight. I'm not going to lie to you. He crossed to the window, huge in the small room. Brindis will be your opponent, head of the war pack. She's been fighting since before you learned to walk. There is no version of tomorrow where you beat her. He turned. So we don't train you to win. We train you to last. And he did. For 4 hours in the cold yard behind the pack house under a sky going purple to black, Torrin taught her the only things that mattered when you already knew the ending. How to protect her throat. How to shield her belly. How to fall without breaking, how to roll with a blow instead of taking it, how to get up. Over and over. How to get up. He never taught her a single strike, because there was no point. And they both knew there was no point. And somehow the not lying about it was the kindest thing anyone had done for her in years. Near the end, breathless, bruised from the falling, she asked him, "Why are you helping me lose gently? Why not just let them dissolve the bond and find a mate who can actually fight?" I was quiet a long moment. The bond hummed between them, and she felt something in him she couldn't name, something guarded, something that had been guarded so long it had grown a shell. "Because I've watched a lot of people fold in that yard," he said, "and I want to see what you do." He looked at her, really looked. "That's all. Just show me who you are, Wren. Win or lose, show me." She didn't have an answer for that, so she got up. Again. The yard was packed at dawn. Word had spread the way it always does. The new Alpha's mate, the runt from Hollowmere, was going to fight, and half of Blackthorn had come to watch what everyone expected would be a short and ugly thing. Wren stood at the edge of the ring and made herself breathe. Halvard stepped into the center. By pack law and the right of assessment, Wren Corliss faces trial by combat. The fight continues until submission or unconsciousness. He paused and the crowd leaned in. Her opponent, Brindis Steelclaw, head of our war pack. Of course. Brindis stepped into the ring already stripped to fighting leathers, muscle-coiled silver braid pulled tight. She looked like something out of the old carvings. A war goddess. Beautiful. Merciless. Absolutely certain. She circled Wren once slow. "Last chance to run home, little wolf," she said, low, almost gentle. "I'm not running. Pity." But there was that flicker again, the fear Wren had felt on the steps. "I was hoping you'd make this quick. For both of us." Halvard raised his hand. "Begin." Brindis moved like lightning. The first blow drove the air clean out of Wren's lungs. The second swept her legs from under her, and she hit the packed earth so hard her teeth clacked and dust filled her mouth. The crowd roared, "Get up!" She rolled aside. Brindis's boot came down where her head had been scrambled up arms high the way Torin had shown her. Throat, belly, fall soft, get up. Brindis came again. A flurry too fast to track. Wren's arms took most of it, and enough got through that she tasted blood bright and metallic. "Is this all?" Brindis taunted, but there was no cruelty in it, only a kind of impatience. "Fall down, please. Fall down so I don't have to keep doing this." Wren felt that too. She was feeling everything now. The quiet sense flung wide open by pain and adrenaline, and it was almost too much, the crowd's hunger. Brindis's reluctance, and threaded through all of it from the ring's edge. Torin feeling something so fierce and so buried she couldn't put a name to it. Brindis grabbed her arm and twisted, and Wren went down again, and this time the warrior followed her down, knee in her spine, hand fisting her hair, wrenching her head back to bare her throat. "Submit," Brindis growled. "Make it easier, on both of us." And every instinct screamed to give in. She was going to lose anyway. Why drag out the pain except she looked up and she saw them. The faces, the satisfaction, the certainty, the same certainty that had followed her every day of her life. Weak, worthless, exactly what we thought. And something in her cracked, not broke. Cracked, like ice under weight, like a door coming off its hinge. Like a locked room finally opening, and what was behind it wasn't small at all. She remembered every ceremony she'd sat through alone, every flick of eyes away from her, every whispered word she wasn't meant to hear and heard anyway. "No," she gasped. "What?" "I said no." With a strength she didn't know she owned, she drove her elbow back into Brindis's ribs. Not enough to hurt her, just enough to loosen the grip for half a heartbeat. And in that half a heartbeat, Wren twisted free, rolled, kicked out wild, caught the warrior's shin and scrambled up onto her feet, swaying, blood on her lip, fists raised. The crowd had gone quiet. "I'm not submitting," Wren said. Brindis stared at her, and the impatience in her face gave way to something else entirely. Because Wren didn't win. She couldn't win. But she stopped losing quietly. Again and again Brindis put her down. Again and again Wren got up. She rolled with what she couldn't block, gave ground where she had to, and refused flatly, stubbornly past the point of sense to stay on the ground. The crowd's bloodlust curdled into something else, a kind of held-breath horror. This wasn't the show they'd come for. The runt was supposed to fold. But Wren Corliss had spent her whole life being underestimated, and she had learned exactly one thing that no one could take from her. She knew how to get up. "Stay down," Brindis snarled, and there at last real frustration cracked through the warrior's control. "Make me," Wren spat blood and dust. And then she remembered something. Not a fighting trick, a healing one. Something Oswin had taught her years ago, kneeling beside a thrashing wounded wolf. Don't fight the strong one head on. Let it spend itself. Use what it gives you. So when Brindis charged again, Wren didn't brace. She dropped and rolled and let the warrior's own force carry her stumbling past, and for 3 whole seconds Brindis was off balance and Wren was still standing. The crowd made a sound she'd never heard aimed at her before. It almost sounded like awe. Then Brindis recovered, and her fist caught Wren square in the temple, and the world went white and then dark at the edges. Wren felt herself falling, felt the earth come up, and this time her body simply would not answer when she told it to rise. A boot pressed against her throat. Not choking, dominant. The old shape of surrender. "Submit," Brindis said. And it wasn't cruel, it was almost pleading. "You've done it, you've shown them. Now stop before I break something that won't heal." Wren's mouth moved. Through the ringing, through the doubled vision, she found the ring's edge. She found Torin. And his face wasn't disappointment, wasn't pity. It was pride. She'd lost the fight. She hadn't lost herself. "I submit," she said, and the words tasted like ash. But they were the smart words, the right words, because fighting to unconsciousness would prove nothing but stubbornness, and she was done proving she was stubborn. She'd proved something better. Brindis lifted her boot instantly, stepped back, and Wren felt it through the open channel of her gift. The warrior was relieved, and underneath the relief Bran knew something that had not been there yesterday. Respect. "Trial by combat," Halvard called, "failed," the crowd murmured. "But," the old councilman went on, and Wren, flat on her back in the dust, felt the word land like a lifeline. The mate showed courage in the face of certain defeat. She has earned the right to attempt the second trial. Hands lifted her. Torrens. She wanted to tell him she could walk. Her legs disagreed. He carried her from the yard without a word, and the crowd parted around them, and behind her she heard it, the thing she'd never heard in her life. Did you see how many times she got up? Brindis had to work for it. Still lost, though. Yeah. But did you see? The healer's name was Elspeth. Gentle hands, sharp eyes, salves that smelled of pine and something bitter. She clucked over the cracked rib, the bruising, the split lip. You're lucky she pulled her strikes, Elspeth said. Toward the end. She what? Once you stopped going down easy, she stopped trying to destroy you and started trying to make you yield. The old healer's eyes crinkled. Take it as the compliment it was. Torrens stood at the window the whole time, silent, watching. When Elspeth left, the quiet settled thick between them. You fought well, he said. I lost. You fought well. Each word set down separately like stones. The whole pack saw it, and they're not talking about how weak you are. They're talking about how you wouldn't quit. He sat on the edge of the bed, close but not touching. That's not nothing here. That's everything here. She turned her head to look at him, ignoring the spike of pain. Torren, that woman on the council, Celine Marrow. The temperature dropped through the bond again. She was at my ceremony, Wren said, in Hollowmere, days of running from here, and now she sits on your council. That's not a coincidence. People don't travel that far to watch a stranger get humiliated in a field. She was there for me, before you ever walked out of those trees. She held his eyes. Why? For a long moment he said nothing, and she felt him deciding how much to tell her, how much she could carry. Celine wanted her daughter to be my mate, he said at last. When I chose otherwise, she took it as an insult to her blood. Her line. His jaw worked. She's the most dangerous wolf on that council. Not because she's the strongest, because she's the most patient. She doesn't fight you. She arranges things so the fight comes to you already lost. So the trials are supposed to be fair. He didn't quite look at her. They're supposed to be. Which wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. She arranged my ceremony. Wren thought the cold spreading. Somehow, she knew I'd be the one left standing alone. She knew Torren was coming for a mate. Did she put me in his path? Am I not the accident I thought I was? Am I the plan? She didn't say it. Not yet. Because she didn't have proof, and she was learning fast that in Blackthorn you didn't accuse without proof. Rest, Torren said, standing. The second trial is knowledge, 2 days from now. It's the one where you have a chance. At the door he paused. Wren. The way you kept getting up. He didn't turn around. I've led warriors who couldn't do that. Grown wolves twice your size who folded the first time the ground came up. A beat. Whatever Hollowmere told you about yourself, they were reading the wrong book. And he was gone before she could answer. She lay in the dark, cataloging bruises and small victories, and somewhere below her the pack settled into its night voices, laughter, the sounds of a home she was starting dangerously to want. 2 days. She did not waste them. Torren brought her books, histories of Blackthorn guides to pack law healing texts, dense enough to make her eyes swim, and she read until the candle guttered and her head throbbed and the words blurred together. You can't learn all of it in 2 days, Torren said from the doorway on the second night. Then I'll learn what I can and I'll be honest about the rest. She didn't look up. Knowledge is the one thing they never thought to check me for, because they only ever looked at how small I am. She turned a page. So they have no idea what's in here. She felt his approval before he spoke it. You're different than you were in that field in Hollowmere. I'm the same person. She finally looked at him. I just have something to fight for now. That changes what a person will carry. Something in him went quiet and still. Tell me about the council, she said before the moment could get too large. Who do I fear most? He sat, and he told her. Halvard Fair, rigid, a former alpha who'd stepped down to let Torren lead, show him strength and he'd respect it. Rowan, who cared for numbers more than politics. Isla, practical to the bone. A quiet weapons master named Thorn who watched more than he spoke. And Celine, Wren said. And Celine. His voice flattened. She'll ask about mating law, succession. She'll try to walk you into admitting you're not fit to be an alpha's mate. Don't let her. Answer everything like you're certain even when you're not. In that hall, doubt reads as weakness." She nodded, making a map of it in her mind. But that night something else pulled her out of bed, because she couldn't stop thinking about Celine's little wave, the patience under it. And when the pack house had gone dark and quiet, Wren wrapped herself in her cloak and slipped down to the one place a clever wolf goes when she needs to know a thing nobody will tell her. The library. She was not, it turned out, the first one there. An old woman sat by a low fire, a book open on her knee. She was ancient hair, pure white face, a soft map of years, but her eyes, when they lifted to Wren, were sharp, and they held no scorn in them at all. Something else. Something Wren hadn't seen since a rocking chair by a dead hearth in a cottage far away. "You're the girl who wouldn't stay down," the old woman said. "I'm Wren. I know who you are, child." She patted the bench beside her. "Sit, before you fall. That rib isn't as healed as Elspeth thinks." Wren sat. And the moment she did, she felt it because her gift was wide open. Now she couldn't seem to close it all the way anymore. She felt what came off this stranger. Warmth, steadiness, and grief old and worn smooth, the grief of someone who had outlived nearly everyone she'd ever loved. "She feels like Gran," Wren thought, and her throat closed without warning. "Rosen," the old woman said. "Elder Rosen. I led a pack of my own once 3 ridges east, long ago. Now I'm too old to lead and too stubborn to die, so they keep me around to remember things nobody else bothered to." A dry smile. "You'd be amazed what packs forget on purpose. You're here late. So are you, which tells me you're frightened of the trial." Rosen tilted her head. "But you're in the library, not your bed, which tells me you'd rather do something about your fear than lie awake in it." The sharp eyes warmed. "Your grandmother would have liked you." Wren went very still. "I never said I had a grandmother. You didn't have to." Rosen closed her book. "You've got the look of a girl raised by an old woman, the kind who sits up straight when she's scared, who reads in the dark, who thinks someone taught me that I mattered once and I refuse to forget it even now she's gone." She reached out and with one dry, gentle hand tucked a strand of hair behind Wren's ear, the exact gesture, the exact one, and Wren's eyes flooded before she could stop them. "There now," Rosen said softly. "There, I know." And Wren, who had not truly wept in front of another living soul since the night they buried Gran Isolde, put her face in her hands and did. Rosen let her, said nothing, just sat, one hand warm between Wren's shaking shoulder blades until the storm passed. "Listen to me," the old alpha said when Wren had gone quiet. "You want to know about the council, about Celine Marrow, why she watches you the way a cat watches a door." She waited until Wren looked up. "I'll tell you what I know. But first I'll tell you the only thing that will save you in that hall tomorrow, and it isn't a fact." "What is it?" "Strength." Rosen leaned close. "Not the strength they measure in the yard. That's the smallest kind there is. Any fool with big shoulders has that." Her voice dropped. "Real strength is getting up when the getting up costs everything, and it's this the thing you did today without even knowing you were doing it." She pressed one finger very lightly to the center of Wren's chest. "It's reaching down and pulling somebody else up along with you. That's the strength that outlasts the big shoulders. That's the strength that changes a pack." She sat back. "You have it. I felt it the moment you walked in. It's why she's afraid of you." "Celine afraid of me?" Wren almost laughed. "I'm the weakest wolf in 3 territories. You keep saying weak when you mean small." Rosen's eyes glinted. "They are not the same word, child, and the day you stop confusing them is the day she loses." She stood, joints cracking, and gathered her book. "Now, Celine Marrow, here is what you should know before you walk into that hall, and here is what I want you to watch for while you're in it." And the old woman told her. The great hall was fuller for the knowledge trial than it had been for the fight, because a body could break in an afternoon, but a mind unraveling in public that was entertainment that lasted. Wren walked to the center of the floor. She had braided her hair back tight and left her face bare. No hiding today. She could feel Torrin at the edge of the hall, and the bond between them ran steady and warm, 2 days stronger than it had been. Not love, not yet, but solidarity. She was not at least alone. The council looked down from the dais, and Celine Marrow's small, satisfied smile was already in place. Ren Corliss, Halvard said. You've passed the first trial by courage. Today you face the second, knowledge. You'll answer until we're satisfied or until you fail 3 times. Do you understand? I understand. Then we begin. Celine leaned forward at once. The 3 primary laws of pack hierarchy. Recite them. Easy. Ren had them cold. The Alpha's word is absolute in matters of survival. Strength earns rank, but rank carries the duty to protect those beneath it, and any challenge for position must be witnessed and fought fairly, or the challenger is exiled. Celine's smile tightened 1 degree. Correct. The grounds for dissolving a mate bond. There it is. Rosen had warned her. She'll aim straight for your own bond to make you say out loud that it can be broken. A mate bond can be dissolved only 3 ways, Ren said, keeping her voice level. Mutual agreement, the death of one mate, or a ruling of the full council in cases of proven harm or betrayal. She paused and then delivered the piece Celine had not expected her to know, the piece she'd found buried in a footnote at midnight. But a council ruling requires a unanimous vote, because interfering with a bond the moon has witnessed is a grave act, not a convenience. The unburned side of Halvard's face moved. Approval. Celine's did not. Correct, she bit out. And so it went. Halvard on the treaties that bordered Blackthorn's land, Rowan on resources and stores, Isla on the resolution of territorial disputes, Thorn the quiet weapons master on the properties of metals, a trick meant to catch her flat. But Ren had spent her childhood identifying tools at her grandmother's side, and she answered it well enough. An hour passed. Then 2. Her throat went dry. She did not miss a single question. And she watched the whole time the way Rosen had told her to watch, because the old woman's parting warning had been strange. When the questions turn to healing, child, pay attention to which of them she asks and in what order. Celine doesn't waste breath. If she reaches for a subject, it's because she's already decided how it ends. So when Celine abruptly said healing, Ren went very still inside. A pack member is struck by a silver-tipped arrow, Celine said. Your immediate treatment. Ren answered it cleanly. Shift to human healing runs faster. Remove the arrow but never straight back. The barbs break off. Pack the wound to slow the bleeding and draw the poison, and monitor for silver sickness, the fever and the seizures, because even perfectly treated silver kills 1 in 3. Correct, Celine said. And here, exactly as Rosen had promised, she leaned in. One more. On healing. A mate falls ill after bonding. Wasting. No wound, no fever. Slow. Over months. What does a wise healer suspect? The hall was quiet, and Ren felt the trap yawn open under the question, not the trap Celine thought she was setting, but a different one. Deeper one Celine had shown her by accident just by asking. Why would she ask that? A slow wasting after a bond over months. No wound, no fever. That's not a trial question. That's not from any book on that shelf. That's specific. That's remembered. That's someone describing something they've seen, Rosen. 3 ridges east, she led a pack long ago, and she told me to watch what Celine reaches for because she doesn't waste breath. And she told me one more thing at the door, so quiet I almost missed it. Ask her sometime, child, about the pack Celine came from before she came to us. Ask her what happened to the Alpha who was supposed to marry her. Ask her why she left 3 ridges east. 3 ridges east. That's where Rosen led. There from the same Ren's mind was racing so fast she nearly missed her own mouth answering. A wise healer, Ren said slowly, suspects poison, the slow kind, the kind that hides in food and looks like fate. She held Celine's eyes, the kind you'd only recognize if you'd seen it done before. The hall was silent, and for one single unguarded instant so fast that no one else in that room could have caught it, no one without a gift flung wide open by fear, Celine Marrow's smile slipped, just once, just enough. She flinched. Ren thought her heart slamming. I said, if you'd seen it done before, and she flinched. Which means I hit something. Which means Rosen was right. Which means whatever Celine is doing to me isn't the beginning of anything. It's a pattern. She's done this before. To someone. Maybe more than someone. Correct, Celine said. Smooth again. Ice refrozen over the crack. But Ren had seen the water underneath. Halvard cleared his throat. The final question. This one comes from all of us. He glanced down the table. Even Celine inclined her head. "You've shown you can recite. Now show us you understand. In your own words, what is Blackthorn's greatest strength and its greatest weakness? Not a fact, an opinion. A trap of a different shape because any answer could offend someone on that dais." Wren took a breath. "Your greatest strength," she said, "is that you demand everything of everyone. You don't coddle weakness. You've built a pack of wolves who can survive anything because you taught them they had no other choice." She let that land. Then she met each of them one at a time. "And your greatest weakness is the exact same thing carried too far. You're so afraid of softness that you've forgotten it was ever a strength. You test every wolf so hard that you'd snap someone who only needed a season to grow into what they were always going to be." Her voice steadied. "I'm that someone. I'm the wolf Hollowmere threw away as useless, but I'm also the wolf who got up 15 times in your yard, who read your law until her eyes bled, who is standing in front of you right now unbroken." A beat. "Your weakness is that you nearly missed what I could become because you were too busy measuring what I am." Silence crashed down over the hall. She had just criticized Blackthorn, its pride, its ways, its whole hard heart in front of the entire pack. It was either the bravest thing she'd ever done or the most foolish. Halvard stared at her a long moment. Then slowly both halves of his face began to smile. "Well," he said, "that's an answer." He looked down the table. "I vote to pass her." "Agreed," said Rowan. "Agreed," said Isla. "Agreed," said Thorne so quietly it almost wasn't there. 4 sets of eyes turned to Celine Marrow. And she was trapped, and she knew it, caught in her own council's rules with a whole pack watching. "Agreed," she said, each letter a small cold stone. "She passes." The hall erupted, some cheering, some grumbling, all of them surprised. Wren swayed where she stood, wrung out, and then Torin was there, a hand under her elbow, and she heard the real thing in his voice, the thing he didn't say often. Pride. "One more," she whispered. "One more," he agreed. But as he led her out past the staring pack and the seething councilwoman, Wren's eyes found Elder Rosen at the edge of the hall, the old woman watching her go with a look that was equal parts warning and love. And Rosen lifted one hand slow and touched 2 fingers to the center of her own chest. "The strength that outlasts the big shoulders," the gesture said. "You found it. Now hold on to it, because you're going to need it." And Wren understood, walking out into the cold, clean air with her mate's hand steady at her side, that she had won the wrong trial to feel safe. Because the combat trial had tested her body, and the knowledge trial had tested her mind. And there was one trial left: endurance. 3 days alone in the wild, they'd told her, 3 days of cold and hunger, and the bond stretched to screaming. But she knew now what she hadn't known this morning. Celine Marrow had done this before. To someone. To a wasting mate 3 ridges east in a pack she'd shared with an old woman who now sat by a library fire and remembered things others forgot on purpose. And whatever was waiting for Wren out in that dark wilderness on the second night, it was not going to be an accident either. They sent her into the wild at sunset with nothing but the clothes on her back. The whole pack gathered at the boundary to watch her go. Tradition, Torin had said, so everyone could witness the last trial begin. Wren stood at the edge of Blackthorn's land, and the peaks behind her had already gone black against a bruised sky, and Halvard spoke the formal words. 3 days, he said. 3 nights, alone. Return by the 3rd dawn and claim your place among us. Fail, and you leave Blackthorn forever. I understand. Then go, and may the moon light your path. She looked back once. Found Torin in the crowd. Their eyes held, and the bond between them pulsed one last warm thread before the distance began to pull it thin. And at the very edge of the gathering, half in shadow, she found the other face too. Celine Marrow, watching, patient. She'll come on the 2nd night, Rosen had warned her by the library fire. That's the shape of this trial. They send someone with an offer: quit now, go home with your dignity, or stay and prove you belong. Most quit. Because on the 2nd night, cold and starving and alone in the dark, the doubt gets louder than any wound. The old woman's eyes had sharpened. But it won't be a stranger they send, not for you. Celine will come herself. And she won't just be testing whether you'll quit. Watch her. Watch what she wants you to see, and then look very hard at everything she doesn't. Wren turned and walked into the dark alone. The first day was almost manageable. She found a stream within the hour, following deer trails down through pines so thick it swallowed the light. She drank deep. She built a shelter under a rock overhang, packed it with boughs against the wind, coaxed a small fire out of dry tinder, the way her father had taught her before he died. The work kept her hands busy and her mind quiet, and the loneliness stayed at the edges, circling but not yet close, until dark fell, and the forest woke up around her. Not blackthorn wolves, something wilder, older, out past the neutral line, and the bond in her chest began softly to ache. Just a dull throb at first, like a bruise forming under the skin. She could feel Torin dimly miles off, and the distance hurt more than she'd braced for. They barely know each other, she reminded herself. This is an arrangement, a bargain. So why does it feel like something's being pulled out of me by the root? She slept in pieces, woke at every snapped branch, and she was glad, so glad, when the gray light came. The second day, hunger set its teeth in her. She found berries and tested each one the slow, careful way. She speared a fish in the shallows, clumsy, patient, triumphant. Not enough, but enough to keep moving. The bond hurt worse now. A constant pull, a compass needle dragging her back toward home, toward him, and twice she caught herself walking that direction before she stopped and turned around. Not yet. Third dawn. You hold until the third dawn. It was the aloneness that hollowed her out. Worse than cold, worse than hunger. Wolves were made for the pack, made to be surrounded, and being cut off from all of it went against something deep in the blood. She talked to herself just to hear a voice. Sang the old songs Granny Solde had sung her, and her own voice cracked on the high notes, and she kept singing anyway. As the light began to fail, she saw them. 2 wolves on the ridge above her shelter. Not attacking, just watching. Blackthorn's own she, understood observers, making sure she didn't die out here, but forbidden to help, which was almost worse. So close and unreachable. Night fell hard and cold. She fed the fire with numb fingers and huddled close to it, shivering, and waited for what she knew was coming. She heard the footsteps before she saw her. Celine Marrow stepped into the firelight, carrying a pack and wearing an expression of soft sympathy that fit her sharp face like a borrowed coat. "Ren," she said gently, "I've come to offer you a choice. Here it is, right on schedule. Rosin, you old marvel. You've proven yourself." Celine settled by the fire, close, warm, reasonable. 2 trials passed, 2 nights out here alone. No one questions your courage now, so you can go home with honor. Find a pack that won't ask so much of you. She opened the pack and firelight caught it, food, water, warm, dry clothes. Or you can take these and stay until dawn tomorrow. No one needs to know I helped. We'll say you endured on your own. The temptation was a physical thing, food, warmth, an end to it. But Ren heard the second trap folded inside the first. Because taking the supplies would be cheating, accepting help was failing the trial just as surely as quitting. Celine wasn't offering mercy. She was offering a rope with a noose already tied in it. "Why are you really here?" Ren asked. Her voice came out rough from disuse, and Celine's mask slipped because it was just the 2 of them now in the dark, past the reach of any witness. "Because I want you gone," she said simply. "You don't deserve him. You don't deserve Blackthorn." She leaned in. "But I'm practical. You've impressed people. If you pass this last trial, you'll have influence, and influence is inconvenient. So I'm offering you a way out that serves us both. You leave with your pride. I get you gone, and Torin finds a proper mate. A mate like your daughter. My daughter is strong, everything an alpha needs. Except she's not the one he chose." Ren met the older woman's eyes across the fire. "And I'm not quitting." Celine studied her a long moment, and then she laughed low and bitter. "You remind me of someone," she said half to herself. "A long time ago, another girl who thought her stubbornness would save her." Something crossed her face, grief, and something uglier braided together. It didn't. And there it was, the crack, the thing Rosin had told her to watch for. Watch what she wants you to see and look hard at everything she doesn't. She didn't mean to say that. Another girl a long time ago thought her stubbornness would save her. It didn't. Who 3 ridges east, the pack she came from, the alpha who was supposed to marry her. A slow wasting after a bond over months, No wound, no fever, the kind you only recognize if you've seen it done before. She's not just protecting her daughter's marriage. She's covering something, something old, something with a body under it. Who was she? Wren asked very softly. Celine's face closed like a slammed door. Finish freezing if you're so determined. She stood shouldering the pack. We'll see by morning whether pride keeps a wolf warm. She melted into the dark. And Wren sat by her dying fire, heart hammering, and thought she came to break me. Instead she handed me a thread. And if I pull it? Except that was when she heard the other sound. Not footsteps. Movement. Low, spread out, deliberate. Coming through the trees from the direction of the neutral line, from the wrong direction, from the direction no blackthorn observer would come. Wren went still, reached out with the gift wide as she could, flung it into the dark like a net. And what came back turned her blood to water. Wolves. Not blackthorn. Not the wild ones either. These are moving with purpose in formation. Hunting. Quiet. And the thing coming off them isn't hunger. It's cold intent. It's men doing a job they've done before. Scouts. Those are scouts. Someone is scouting the boundary of blackthorn territory in the dark on the exact night the pack's attention is fixed on a trial at the far edge of the valley. On the one night the whole council and half the war pack are gathered watching a girl freeze in the woods. It's a distraction. I'm the distraction. The trial is the distraction. Someone planned to hit Blackthorn while everyone was looking at me. And Celine knew. Celine came out here herself tonight to make sure I'd stay put and keep everyone's eyes on the wrong place until the choice broke over her in a single terrible instant. Stay. Endure to the third dawn. Pass the trial. Become pack. Win the only thing she'd ever wanted, a place, a home to belong. Or run home now days early and fail the trial. Dissolve the bond by her own hand. Lose everything she'd bled for. On nothing but a feeling. On a gift half of Blackthorn didn't even believe was real. If I'm wrong, I've thrown away my whole life for nothing. If I'm right and I stay and I win a home that's on fire. She didn't think about it in the end, because there was nothing to think about. Wren kicked dirt over her fire, turned her back on the third dawn and everything it promised, and ran. She ran through the dark on the bond like a rope, that aching pull toward Torin, the only compass she had. Roots caught her, branches tore at her. She fell twice and got up twice, because getting up was the one thing she had never once failed to do, and the ache in her chest grew warmer and sharper with every mile she closed. She burst out of the tree line at the boundary just as the eastern sky went the faintest gray. The whole pack was there, gathered to wait, though it was a full day too early for her to return, and their faces turned to her all at once, confusion and disappointment already forming, because everyone knew what it meant when a wolf came back before the third dawn. She had failed. She had quit. That was the only story her early return could tell. Torin stepped forward, his face gone, still something dying behind his eyes. Wren didn't stop running until she reached him. "Scouts!" she gasped. "The boundary northeast along the neutral line. I felt them, a hunting pack moving in formation, not ours." She grabbed the front of his shirt. "It's a raid. Tonight was the raid. The trial pulled everyone to this edge of the valley, and they're hitting the other side, and Celine came out to keep me in place. She knew Torin. She knew." "Wren." His hands closed over hers. "You came back early. You forfeit the trial. Do you understand what that—" "I don't care about the trial." It came out of her raw and cracking and true. "Let it dissolve. Let all of it dissolve. I would rather lose you honestly than keep you and let them burn everything you built while I sat in the dark being good." He stared at her. And behind him, Brindis was already moving, because Brindis, war-packed to the bone, had heard northeast and formation and hadn't waited for anyone to finish. She had 2 scouts of her own running before Wren stopped speaking, and they came back at a dead sprint inside 10 minutes, and what they said turned the whole boundary silent. Tracks. Fresh. 15, maybe 20 wolves. Along the neutral line northeast, moving toward the undefended pastures where Blackthorn kept its young and its old. Exactly where a girl with a gift had said they'd be. Torin turned to the pack, and his voice cracked across the dawn like a whip. And Blackthorn moved the whole war pack, pouring northeast in a gray flood, and by the time the sun cleared the peaks, the raiders had been met at the pasture edge and turned back before they'd touched a single one of the vulnerable, because a warning had come in time. Because Wren Corliss had thrown away everything she wanted to give it. They gathered in the great hall that evening, and Wren stood before the council with her forfeit hanging over her head like a blade. "She returned before the third dawn," Celine said, and her voice was smooth as ever, but Wren could feel the fury under it now, the plan gone wrong, the fear leaking through the cracks. "The law is the law. She failed the trial. The bond dissolves. She goes home." "She saved the pasture," Brindis said flatly. "My scouts confirmed it. 20 raiders turned back because she warned us." "On a feeling," Celine snapped. "We don't rule by a Hollowmere runt's feelings. We rule by results." Halvard's burned face was grim. "And the result is that our young are alive tonight who might not have been." It was Elder Rosen who rose then slow from the bench at the edge of the hall where she'd been sitting quiet the whole time. The room stilled for her the way rooms still for the very old and the very wise. "There is a question none of you are asking," Rosen said. Her voice was thin, but it carried. "How did a raiding party of 20 know that the whole of Blackthorn's warpack would be gathered at the southern boundary on this exact night, watching this exact trial?" She let it hang. "That is not luck. Someone told them when to come." Her ancient eyes moved slow and deliberate down the length of the dais. "Someone who knew the trial schedule. Someone who arranged to be out in those woods herself tonight instead of here where a councilwoman belongs." The hall went utterly silent, and every eye turned at last to Celine Marrow. It came apart quickly after that, because once a thing is looked at plainly it can't be unseen. And Wren, standing there, felt the whole council's attention swing like a great door and felt Celine's patience finally shatter behind her eyes. "This is absurd," Celine said. "I went to offer the girl an honorable way out, as is my right under the trial." "You went to keep her still," Wren said quietly. "So the eyes stayed south, didn't you? You have no proof." "No." Wren took a step forward. "But I have a question. The one you asked me in the knowledge trial. About a mate who wastes slowly after a bond over months, no wound, no fever." She held Celine's gaze and she did not look away. "You asked it like you'd seen it done. And tonight out there you said something else. You said I reminded you of another girl, a long time ago, who thought her stubbornness would save her, and it didn't." Her voice was very soft and very steady, and it filled the whole silent hall. "Who was she, Celine? What happened 3 ridges east? What happened to the pack you came from, and to whoever it was you couldn't let walk away?" And Elder Rosen spoke from the edge of the room. "Her name was Aylin," the old woman said. "She was going to marry the alpha of my neighbor Pack 3 ridges east 40 years ago. Celine wanted him. Aylin got him." A long, terrible pause. "Aylin wasted away over one winter. No wound, no fever. And Celine left that valley the spring after the funeral and never once looked back until she turned up here at Blackthorn, a councilwoman with a daughter of marrying age and a very great interest in who our alpha would choose." Rosen's eyes were wet and unwavering. "I have waited 40 years to say that out loud. I am very old. I no longer care what it costs me." Celine Marrow rose to her feet, and for one moment the mask was entirely gone, and what was under it was so much smaller and so much more broken than the patient monster. Wren had feared just a woman who had wanted something once 40 years ago and had never stopped paying for the way she'd taken it. "Prove it," Celine whispered, but there was no ice left in it, only a very old, very tired dread. "We may never prove Aylin," Halvard said heavily. "That's 40 years and 3 ridges gone, but tonight," his voice hardened, "tonight we have raiders who knew our schedule, and a councilwoman who was exactly where she needed to be to give it to them, that we can weigh, and we will." He stood. "Celine Marrow, you are removed from this council pending inquiry, confined to the pack house, effective now." 2 warpack wolves stepped forward, and Celine, who had arranged so much from the shadows, was led out of the great hall into the light where everyone could see her, and she did not look patient anymore. She looked like a woman watching a plan of 40 years collapse all at once. At the door she turned back, and her eyes found Wren. "He'll still come for you," she said. Quiet, almost kind in the way of someone with nothing left to lose. "I only had to keep you out of the way tonight, but there was always going to be a tonight. Do you understand, girl? Someone was always coming for the runt. Torrin Vane was foolish enough to love." "Who?" Wren said. But Celine only smiled that small wrong smile one last time and let them take her out. The answer came 3 days later, sealed in black wax. Torin read it in the great hall with the council around him, and Ren watched his face harden past stone, and when he set the letter down, his voice was very quiet. "Alaric Skarn," he said. "Alpha of Ironmaw. He's invoking the right of contest." "What's the right of contest?" Ren asked, and dread was already climbing her spine. Rowan answered grim. "Old law. If an alpha takes a mate from outside the pack, a neighboring alpha can challenge that bond within the first month. Fight the alpha for her. Winner takes the mate." "He wants to fight Torin," Ren said. "For me." "To the death," Halvard said, "or until one yields." And Ren understood all at once the shape of the thing Celine had spent 40 years pretending to be the whole of. She was never the storm. She was the wind before it. Alaric Skarn is the storm. And she was clearing his path, keeping the pack blind, keeping Torin distracted, softening the ground so that when Ironmaw's alpha came for the runt, there'd be no one watching the right direction. Ren had heard of Skarn. Everyone had. Ironmaw was a byword for cruelty, and Skarn himself had gone through 3 mates already, each one dead, each one ruled an accident. 3 mates. Dead. No wound, no fever over months. The exact thing Celine asked me in the trial, because they knew each other. 40 years ago, 3 ridges east, were they always working together? 2 hunters, one who moves in the light and one who moves in the dark. When? Torin asked, deadly calm. 3 days, neutral ground, witnessed by every neighboring pack. Torin looked at Ren, and she felt through the bond the thing he would not say in front of the council, the fear not for himself but for her. Because Skarn was bigger than Torin, longer reach, and he did not fight fair ever. "There has to be another way," Ren said. "What if I dissolve the bond myself, voluntarily? Then there's nothing to fight for." "No." Torin's answer was instant and absolute. "You fought too hard to be here. I am not letting you sacrifice yourself because a butcher thinks he can frighten us." "But if it protects—" "I said no." He turned and faced her fully, the whole council watching, and he didn't lower his voice. "You bled in that yard. You froze in those woods. You threw away everything you wanted to save my people on nothing but your own good heart." His hand rose to the side of her face. "I have never in my life seen anything as strong as you, Ren Corliss. I am not trading you to a murderer to buy myself an easy month." And Ren, who had been called weak every day of her life, felt the words go into her like light into a locked room. "Then let me help," she said. "Not with claws, with this." She touched her own chest where the gift lived, where Rosen had pressed one finger and said, "This is the strength that changes a pack." Skarn has done this before. He's left a trail, and people who leave trails can be caught. Her mind was already moving, already racing ahead. "Give me the 3 days, not to run, to dig." Torin looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. She did not sleep for 3 days. Because the answer was in the old law, she was sure of it. And the old law was buried in the library. And the library was where an ancient woman sat by a fire and remembered things others forgot on purpose. Rosen helped her. Of course she did. They pulled down volumes so old the pages crumbled at a touch. Pack law, ancient treaties, the forgotten rulings of the right of contest which no one had invoked in 50 years because 50 years was long enough for everyone to forget the fine print. And on the 3rd night, an hour before dawn, Ren found it. A single paragraph in a book old enough that Rosen herself had never opened it. "Requirements for the challenger under the right of contest." Ren read aloud, and her voice shook. "The challenging alpha must prove he can provide safe harbor for the mate he claims. He must demonstrate territory, resources, stable pack." She looked up. "Skarn has all that. Ironmaw's huge. That's not it." Her finger dropped to the next line. "But look, he must further prove no prior claim lies against his fitness to mate." Rosen leaned in, her old eyes sharpening. "Meaning," Ren whispered, "no mate's dead under suspicious circumstances." The old woman's breath left her all at once. 3 dead mates, Rosen said. "If you can put even the shadow of murder on those deaths, even the question of it before the fight begins, he's disqualified." Ren was on her feet. "He forfeits the right of contest. He can't claim me. There's no fight." Can you prove it? I don't know. Wren was already gathering her cloak. But I know where the proof runs. It runs the way all of Skarn's proof runs out. Away. Wolves who fled Ironmaw and lived. Somebody survived that place carrying what they saw. She stopped at the door and turned back to the old woman who had in the space of 2 weeks become the second grandmother of her life. And I know exactly what to offer them to make them brave enough to speak. Sanctuary. The one thing a wolf running from a monster wants more than anything in the world. A door that opens instead of closing. Rosen smiled slow and wet and fierce. Your grandmother, she said, would be on her feet. They sent messengers to every neighboring pack. Torin threw open Blackthorn's doors to anyone who had fled Ironmaw and would speak, and they came, not many but enough. 3 wolves who had run from Alaric Skarn and lived carrying what they'd seen out of that dark valley in their bones. And Wren sat with each of them, because this was the thing she could do that no one else in Blackthorn could. She sat with the frightened and she opened her gift and she let them feel for the first time in years, maybe ever, someone reaching into their terror and holding it steady from the inside. She drew the fear out the way Oswin had taught her, the way her grandmother had done it before her, and in the safe, quiet space that left behind the truth came. A healer who'd tended Skarn's first mate and watched her die of what the records called food sickness and the healer's own eyes had called poison. A warrior who'd seen the second mate argue with Skarn on a cliff's edge and seen Skarn walk back down alone. A record in a fleeing healer's own hand of the third mate's body bruises in the shape of a story no accident ever told. Not one of them alone was proof. But together, laid side by side, they were a shadow too dark to look away from. And a shadow under the old law was enough. The neutral ground was a clearing ringed by standing stones older than any pack's memory. Representatives from every territory in the region had come to witness the right of contest hadn't been invoked in 50 years, and no one wanted to miss it. Alaric Skarn was already there when Blackthorn arrived. I was enormous, taller even than Torin. A mountain of scarred muscle with pale eyes that moved over Wren like she was already property he was choosing how to store. He smiled when he saw her. It was the worst thing she'd ever seen. So this is the prize, he said. The little runt who caused so much trouble. Wren stepped forward before Torin could answer. I'm Wren Corliss, she said, and I'm nobody's prize. Skarn laughed, and Wren, reaching out with the gift because she couldn't help it, now felt what was under the laugh, and it was nothing. Not cruelty even. Just a vast, cold emptiness where other people's pain should have registered and simply didn't. A wolf who felt nothing at all. He's not a monster the way a storm is a monster, she thought. He's a monster the way a hole is. There's just nothing there. Before this contest proceeds, Wren said, and her voice rang clear across the clearing, Blackthorn invokes the right of inquiry. The clearing rippled. On what grounds? Skarn's smile didn't move, but something behind his pale eyes did. An old voice answered him. Because Elder Rosen had insisted on coming, though the journey nearly finished her, and she stepped forward now with 3 witnesses at her back and 50 years of waiting in her spine. On the grounds, Rosen said, that a challenger under the right of contest must prove no prior claim lies against his fitness to mate, and Alaric Skarn has buried 3. She laid it out. The healer, the warrior, the record in a fleeing hand. Not proof of murder, but a pattern too dark and too consistent to be chance 3 dead mates over 15 years. Each one ruled an accident by a pack, too frightened of its own alpha to look twice. And when she was done, the assembled alphas of every neighboring pack looked at Alaric Skarn and did not look away. These are the lies of cowards who fled my pack, Skarn snarled. These are the testimonies of witnesses who survived it, Rosen said, which is more than 3 mates can say. She turned to the ring of watching alphas. The law is clear. The challenger has not proven safe harbor. He has proven the opposite. The right of contest is forfeit. He may not claim this girl. Silence. And then one by one the neighboring alphas nodded. Because the law was the law, and none of them wanted to be the pack that let a mate killer set the precedent. Skarn's claim died right there in the clearing in the light in front of everyone. Wren felt the wave of it break over her relief so sharp it hurt. They'd done it, with no claws at all, with nothing but an old woman's memory and 3 brave, frightened wolves and a gift Hollowmere had spent 23 years calling useless. except Alaric Skarn was still smiling. "Fine," he said. "Then I invoke standard challenge. Not for the girl." His pale eyes slid to Torin. "For the territory. I challenge Torin Vane for Blackthorn itself. To the death." The clearing exploded. "No, no, no, no." She found the loophole. She closed the door and he just kicked out a different wall because a mate claim can be forfeit, but a territorial challenge has no such requirement. A strong alpha can challenge a strong alpha for land any day of the week, and this one is to the death. No yielding. No. Torin's hand found hers. Squeezed once. "It's all right," he murmured. "It is not all right. He's bigger than you. He's Ren." He turned her to face him. "You did the impossible. You saved yourself. Now let me do the one thing I actually know how to do." His scarred face was calm, and under her open gift she felt no fear in him at all, only a terrible settled certainty. "He fights out of spite. I fight for something. That's a bigger gap than the size of his shoulders. You taught me that." He touched her cheek. "You, the runt from Hollowmere, taught the alpha of Blackthorn what strength is. If you die, I won't." He almost smiled. "But if I do, you run Blackthorn better than I ever could. And you make sure no wolf ever sits alone at a ceremony again." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you, Ren. I should have said it days ago. I'm saying it now in case the timing gets away from me." Her eyes flooded. "I love you too. So you'd better win, because I am not done with you." He kissed her fierce and quick. Then he walked to the center of the standing stones, and he shifted, and so did the mountain that had come to kill him. Skarn fought exactly the way Ren had told Torin he would, because she had watched him in that first cold meeting, and she had read him down to the marrow, all overwhelming force, all size and rage, a battering ram that had never once needed finesse, because nothing had ever survived his first charge long enough to require it. So Torin didn't meet the charge. He danced away from it, teeth finding flesh and never staying, never letting himself be pinned, making the bigger wolf turn and turn and turn. Blood in the dirt within minutes, some Skarn's, some Torin's, and Ren stood with her hands fisted so hard her nails cut her palms, and she kept her gift wide open the whole time, even though it hurt, because she would feel it the instant that thread between them snapped. 5 minutes, 10, 15, and Skarn began to tire, because a battering ram is a terrible thing to be when the wall keeps stepping aside. His charges came slower, sloppier. His breath sawed loud enough for the whole clearing to hear. He had come here expecting to end it in one crushing rush, and instead he was bleeding from a dozen wounds and chasing a shadow he couldn't catch. "Finish it," Brindis breathed beside Ren. "Finish it, Torin." And Torin did. When Skarn charged the next time, heavy, exhausted, telegraphed, Torin didn't dance away. He dove under. In past the guard to the soft, vulnerable underside of the great throat, and his jaws closed and locked. Skarn howled, thrashed, rolled, but the grip didn't break, and the clearing held its breath, and Ren felt through the bond the exact moment the fight went out of the bigger wolf, the moment the emptiness in Skarn finally met something it couldn't overpower. Then he went still, not dead. Ren could see his ribs still heaving, but beaten, finished, unable to rise. Torin let go, stepped back, stood over him waiting in case he tried to rise again. Skarn shifted back to human, one hand pressed to his bleeding throat, his face a ruin of rage and disbelief. "Yield," commanded Elder Rosen, "or die Alaric Skarn." For a long moment Ren thought he'd choose death over the shame. His pale eyes burned with 40 years of getting exactly what he wanted, right up until this girl, this runt, this nothing had walked into the world and started closing his doors. Then at last he spat out the word, "Yield." And the clearing erupted in howls. They didn't kill him. That mattered to Ren later, more than she could explain. That in the end, Blackthorn didn't become the thing it had beaten. Skarn was stripped of every future claim on Ren, on Blackthorn, on any pack in the region, and sent back to Ironmaw, a broken alpha whose own wolves had watched him lose. Which was, Rosen observed dryly, a longer punishment than death, and Skarn would serve every day of it. And Selene Marrow, the council removed her, that was never in question. But when the day came to decide what more should be done, it was Ren who stood before them and asked for something no one expected. Mercy. I'm not doing it for her, Wren said when Brenda stared at her like she'd lost her mind. She'd have handed me to a murderer without blinking. I know exactly what she is. She looked around the hall. I'm doing it because I watched what a pack becomes when it decides that being hard is the only way to be strong. I sat at the bottom of a pack like that for 23 years, and I will not help build another one. Her voice steadied. Take her council seat. Take her power. But don't take her life or her freedom. Let her live the rest of her years 3 ridges from anywhere, remembering that the runt she tried to break chose to let her go. That's a heavier stone to carry than any cell. Trust me, I'd know. The hall was silent, and Elder Rosen at the edge of it wept openly and did not care who saw, because that right there was the thing she had felt the first night by the library fire. The strength that outlasts the big shoulders, the strength that changes a pack. The celebration that night was the loudest Blackthorn had heard in a generation. Wren sat with Torin away from the fires in a quiet corner where they could finally breathe. His wounds were stitched and would heal in days. He looked exhausted and lighter than she'd ever felt him. I meant it, he said. What I said in the clearing. I love you, not for the council, not for the bargain. He turned her hand over in his, the too large ring catching firelight. You walked into the worst pack I could have brought you to, carrying a gift a whole territory told you was worthless, and you used it to save every one of us, including me, especially me. Your courting could use work, Wren said. Most alphas don't include death matches and murder trials in the romance. He laughed, a real one, low and warm, rumbling through his chest. Marry me, he said. Properly, not a bargain struck in a field to beat a council clock. A real one. Vows. The whole pack, everyone watching. His eyes were steady. I want them all to know you're not just my mate. You're my equal, my choice, every single day for the rest of my life. Tears spilled down her face before she could stop them. Yes, she said. Yes, of course. Yes. Spring came to Blackthorn 6 months later, warm and green, melting the last black ice off the peaks. Wren stood in the great hall, softer now, maps on the walls of every neighboring pack. The trade routes and alliances she'd spent the winter weaving when the doors opened and Brindis came in with a young female Wren had never seen. Small, trembling, fading bruises along one cheek. Alpha Wren, Brindis said, and the word alpha still made Wren's breath catch 6 months on. This one's seeking sanctuary, from Ironmaw. Wren crossed to her at once and took her cold hands. You're safe now, she said. What's your name? Kate, the girl whispered. Scarn wanted to make me his next after everything. I couldn't stay. I had nowhere. You have somewhere now. Wren's voice was gentle and absolutely certain. Blackthorn grants you sanctuary. No one forces you into anything here ever again. Do you understand me? The girl's eyes filled. Why, you don't even know me. And Wren smiled because it was the exact question she had once asked a scarred stranger on a platform under paper lanterns a lifetime ago when she was still a ghost at her own life. I know enough, she said. That evening she walked out past the packlands alone to a small stone she'd had set at the valley's edge, facing south, facing home toward Hollowmere, toward a cottage with a bird-shaped water stain and a floorboard that creaked by the hearth. She'd carved a single name into the stone herself. Isolde. Wren knelt in the spring grass and she thought of a wrinkled hand stroking her hair in the dark and a voice saying, Love comes to those who wait, little bird. And she understood at last that her grandmother had been right, just not in the way either of them had thought, because the waiting had never been the point. The point was what she carried while she waited. The gift that everyone but one old woman had called worthless. The heart that everyone but one old woman had failed to see. Gran Isolde had seen it, had died still seeing it, had reached out from beyond a grave through a healer's promise and an ancient stranger by a library fire, and made sure the little bird finally learned what she was. You were right, Gran, Wren whispered to the stone, and the spring wind carried it up toward the peaks. I was seen, in the end. A tear fell warm into the grass. I just had to walk all the way to the edge of the world to find the 2 people who could see me, and one of them was you the whole time. Behind her footsteps, large, familiar, Torin come to walk her home the way he did every evening now. She rose, and she did not wipe her eyes because she wasn't ashamed of them anymore. She had started her life as the smallest wolf in 3 territories: the runt, the ghost, the girl who sat alone at ceremony after ceremony waiting for someone to choose her. And in the end she had learned the truth that changed everything. Her worth had never been theirs to give. It had never been theirs to take. It had been hers the whole time, sleeping in a locked room behind her ribs, waiting for a girl brave enough to open the door.